The name of this happy child is Matthew Shepard. Matthew is much like any other 13-year-old boy, except for the fact that he suffers from a debilitating condition, a condition that we still don't know much about, and one that affects anything and everything he does. Matthew suffers from dystonia, and this is his story.
We knew that this condition existed a few years prior to Matthew's diagnosis. Some doctors in Ottawa were testing for it, and we knew a cousin had tremors that lives in Orillia, but we didn't really investigate it much.
But as we don't fully understand it, we know that a certain part of the brain is not functioning properly. Now, interestingly, there's no what we call structural lesion in the brain. For example, if we do a brain scan, an MRI scan, most people with dystonia will be normal, although it could be caused by a stroke or something. But that's unusual. But most people are normal. But what we think is that the brain areas are not functioning properly. They are not talk to each other properly. The area of the brain that thought to be abnormal is something we call the basal ganglia, which is a deep part of the brain. It's thought to be having, I guess, inappropriate type of signaling, and that causes a more widespread disturbance to affect the rest of the brain.
The dystonia started when he was quite young, but it was only if he was upset, if I was to go away, he would shake, and that was the only time. And then as he got a little bit, maybe around 2, he stopped feeding himself. He started shaking with a spoon and trying to play with his toys, anything that required fine motor. And then gradually over the next year or so, his walking was affected.
Got 2 tractors.
Yeah, 2 tractors.
I got 2 tractors now.
Yeah. What do we do with all these tractors?
Dystonia falls into an interesting niche in the medical world. Although it is the second most common movement disorder behind Parkinson's and tied with multiple sclerosis, what doctors know about dystonia isn't much.
May 25th, 2004. Matthew's master feeding himself cereal. Good job. Even using the napkin.
Many physicians have never even heard of the condition. Dystonia can be genetic, contracted through brain trauma, or in some rare cases, the off result of a vaccination. In Matthew's case, his dystonia is genetic. He was born with the condition. Matthew is a particularly severe case, and he suffers from uncontrollable tremors. Matthew struggles in public environments, especially in scenarios when the symptoms of his dystonia are clearly visible. Matthew's anxiety is a direct result of his condition. He often gets nervous in places like public restaurants, where his mother often has to feed him. The team who has made this film often struggle with making Matthew not appear out of place or nervous in front of the camera.
What do you think the worst part of having dystonia is then?
When I go home to restaurants and people stare at me.
So again, I think that because dystonia is, there are many causes for dystonia. So in some cases, it is a physical condition, but without any other, for example, learning disability. But I think in other cases, depending on what causes it, it is often also associated with, for example, learning disability. So I think the answer would depends on what is the actual cause of the dystonia. So it could be associated with, for example, learning disability, but not all the cases are associated with it. Yeah.
Matthew's education is a problem that his mother and father have had to deal with ever since he was a child. One of the side effects of Matthew's dystonia is a learning disability. The combination of his physical handicap and the need for a personalized education has brought Matthew's mother to move him in and out of schools on several occasions.
Matthew has had to change schools a few times. He was in the public system until grade 2, and then homeschooled for grade 3. He went back into the public system in grade 4. And I've had to move him in grade 7, and he's now in a private school, and I find it's a lot better because it's smaller classes and he's able to get the support that he needs. Support's always been the largest problem. I think that someone like Matthew just slips between the cracks because he's not considered, now that I'm trying to put him back in the public system for grade 9, he's no longer considered disabled. So, unless you're in a wheelchair and you need, have toileting issues, or you're a threat to yourself or someone else, you're not really considered disabled because he can walk around and do a lot of things on his own. He just doesn't fit into a category. And he does have learning disabilities as well, which are, a lot of them go along with the dystonia, anxiety disorder, and etc. So, which make remembering things extremely hard. And so I think they should put more emphasis on all kids that have learning disabilities and need extra support. There's not a lot offered out there. You can have a third one if you want. Matthew's had ups and downs with friendships, but he usually had, like from day one, he'd have 1 or 2 close friends, and they seem to remain quite close. And other people that he just didn't feel comfortable with, he just more or less avoids.
Was it hard to become friends with Matt? Not really, because I knew he had some troubles doing some stuff, so I just helped him with it. Stuff like that. I don't look at Matt differently because I'm just a regular guy. Does the same thing I do. We're just true good friends.
Have you ever been made fun of at school by any of the kids?
By these 2 kids.
Did they still bully you, or do you think they understand now? Do you think they're nicer to you?
I'm going to a different school now.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So do you think the kids at your new school like you more?
Yeah.
I've heard about deep brain stimulation as a treatment for many years because his cousin has had it, I think 3 times. And we go to the dystonia conferences every couple years down in Chicago, and over half the children there have had deep brain stimulation, and it's worked quite well for them. Hopefully it'll take away the tremors and the dystonia, but they say on average maybe 60% improvement. And it's going to take a while, I think a few months of programming to get everything working properly, but we're hoping for least a 60% improvement.
Deep brain stimulation, we actually don't know exactly how it works, although we know it works. That's an interesting thing, right? So, because actually a lot of medical discovery are not discovered on, I guess, basis of observation, and then people actually go back and find out how it works. But I can give you what people are thinking is that there is an area of the brain, mainly we call the basal ganglia, that is not functioning properly. So we thought this procedure called deep brain stimulation is to deliver an electrical pulse to this part of the brain. So one theory is that it will suppress the abnormal activity, so enable, for example, other part of the brain to resume or take over and resume the normal activity. And there's another theory is that it imposes a more normal pattern of activity by stimulating it and try to suppress the abnormal electrical activity, because the brain actually works through electrical connection between different parts of the brain. So I think these kind of the main kind of theory. Other possibility is that by stimulating one area of the brain, you can also affect the other area. So you are transmitting or your activity to another area of the brain that could mediate the movement to try to improve it.
A deep brain stimulation, or DBS procedure, would require Matthew to be secured down to ensure he doesn't tremor during the operation. 2 holes shall be drilled into the top of his skull, an electrode placed in each hole, deep into the center of his brain. The electrodes emit electrical pulses that seem to regulate the electrical activity inside the brain. The result of the regulated electrical activity seems to result in drastic improvement in things like fine motor control. Batteries will need to be inserted under the skin, near the shoulder, just below the collarbone. These batteries will power the electrodes in his brain.
Usually, the most procedures are done awake. The main reason for this is that we can talk to the person or ask the person questions for him to do a movement, for example. That is mainly to allow for the surgeon to more precisely locate where to put the electrode. Because sometimes, for example, if someone moves a hand, there is a response in the brain, we can detect them, we know whether the electrode is in the right place or not. So most cases are done awake, although it is possible to do it asleep as well. So there are some people who couldn't tolerate being awake, so they can be put to sleep to have it done. Although we do lose that part in which we can, for example, confirm that the electrode is in the right place.
They're gonna drill 2 holes into my skull, and they're gonna put electrodes through the holes down into my brain, and then they can put 2 batteries in my chest.
So what do you think you'll be like after the surgery?
I won't shake, so that'll be good. So I could write, and I could eat on my own, and I could pour myself a glass of juice or water.
I don't see Matt as disabled because he does basically the same things that we do, but he just has trouble doing them.
I don't think that there are very many people out there that know about dystonia, particularly Matthew's, myoclonus dystonia. It's quite rare, and I think that there are very many people out there that know about dystonia, particularly Matthew's, myoclonus dystonia. It's quite rare, and I think that there are very many people out there that know about dystonia, particularly Matthew's, myoclonus dystonia. It's quite rare, and I think that there are very many people out there that know about dystonia, particularly Matthew's, myoclonus dystonia. It's quite rare, and I think I think that the medical community and the public should be more aware of dystonia.
I think that even today, I think many people with dystonia still didn't get diagnosed for a while. So I think general public and also the primary care doctors sometimes are not very aware of them. For example, I've heard of patients with dystonia affect the eye, so they get these eye closures. They would be looking at an eye problem first. So we can sense to the doctor that the problem is not at the eye itself, it's the muscles, the facial muscles. So I think we still have people who have the condition but didn't get diagnosed. Had to see a number of doctors before they eventually get diagnosed. So I think the problem is to a recognition of the condition, and then because mostly there is treatment for those, either medication or botulinum toxin or surgery. So